Did you ever want to get Saturday detention just to see if you too could form friendships with an athlete, a princess, a brain, a criminal, and an athlete?
Did you ever want to try to create your own pink dress to wear to prom so you too could have the rich popular guy tell you he loved you on the dance floor?
Did you ever hope that when you were an adult, you'd have your own group of close friends to hang out with at St. Elmo's?
If every time you hear the song, "Don't you forget about me," you envision John Bender walking on a football field with his fist in the air, you might know who the Brat Pack is, and you might be a Xennial. And we are too. Hi, I'm Danny.
And I'm Katie.
And you are listening to Katie, take it away.
Generation in Between, a Xennial podcast where we revisit, remember, and sometimes relearn all kinds of things from our 80s childhoods and 90s teen young adulthoods.
Yeah, sorry, we're getting there today. We're drinking coffee.
Danny's like, yours is highlighted in yellow. So then we get to one that's yellow and she starts talking, so I was really confused.
We do write down our intro, everyone. Just we don't come up with this off the top of our head in the moment.
In case you can't tell that we are reading those sentences, in case you wondered. But yes, go on, yes. Danny.
So we're getting it together. We have coffee. All right. So if you didn't figure it out by our intro, today we are talking the Brat Pack, which takes us back in the time machine to the mid to late 80s. So Xennials weren't exactly teens in the 80s at all, but this is kind of a Xennial-adjacent topic, and one that I think is still very relevant to our microgeneration, especially if you had older siblings. And plus, on a selfish note, I freaking love the Brat Pack and I love all the movies. So yes. Hooray for that. It's like when Katie wanted to do an episode on Britney because she loves her so much.
Yes.
Although she was very relevant to Xennials. But anyway.
True.
So what we're going to talk about in this episode, though, is actually not the entire Brat Pack history, but we're going to talk about the new documentary that is now streaming on Hulu called Brats. Yes. And it's made by a member of the Brat Pack himself, Andrew McCarthy. I cannot wait to start this discussion.
Yes. And we have barely talked about it to each other because we're trying to save everything for this episode. So I have all sorts of things to geek out about and say. But first, I know we have a few circle backs and shout outs, Danny.
We sure do. We actually have first of all, this whole episode idea came about because of our listener and our friend Cindy, who sent us the link to the preview for the documentary. And I was like, OMG, heck yes.
Yes.
Let's do it. So thanks, Cindy. We love you so much. Thank you for sending that our way. Also, y'all will see on our socials that we have a little video clip. We have a listener and a friend of mine and a neighbor and a client too, named Danielle, who gave us a super thoughtful gift, a friendship bracelet. So she's a huge Swiftie. She knew that Katie is also a huge Swiftie.
Yes.
And for those of you that are not Swifties, that's a huge thing that they do is make friendship bracelets and trade them at concerts, right? Did I mess that up?
No, that's right.
Okay.
Or literally in real life.
In real life, right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, in real life too, sorry.
Not just at concerts, but mainly at concerts.
Mainly at concerts, but also in real life. So anyway, she made us these cute little bracelets that say Generation in Between, and one of them says Xennial. Y'all can see a little video we did of the Katie receiving the bracelet, and she actually had on a Taylor Swift shirt.
Yes, I had no idea. I was telling Danny that I organized my closet a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
I don't know, maybe a week to 10 days ago. And Danny knows I've had the craziest past 7 to 10 days. She's like, how did you? But, Xennials and older than that, and maybe even younger, will understand sometimes when you're having a week like that or about to, organizing your closet is literally the best thing you can do because it gives you an hour of just focusing on that. And also, I could just find everything faster.
True.
I mean, it sounds kind of boring, but I was like, this is the best day ever. So today when I went to my closet to change because I was in pajamas and I was like, okay, I gotta go
work.
I could wear pajamas. I entertain the idea for a second. I'm like, no, I'll go change. Lo and behold, my Taylor Swift Eras Tour shirt was hanging there so nicely in my closet. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm going to wear that today.
It was meant
and
to
then
be.
I got friendship bracelets. So, hey, check it out.
And by the way, Danielle, they fit us perfectly. So thank you. So thanks for that. And we have a big circle back that is from a listener, but also a listener who was our very first guest
Yes.
Amanda.
Amanda.
I've been waiting to do that so bad. Okay. So Amanda is also a Power Rangers super fan, like our buddy Carlos and her boyfriend, Alexei. And she sent us some info on Thuy Trang, the Yellow Ranger. So she let us know, we missed this in the episode with Carlos, that Thuy was Vietnamese. And she actually immigrated to America as a young child alongside her mom and siblings in 1980. And did you watch that interview she sent? You probably didn't have a chance. I won't say too much, but
okay.
Oh my gosh, she had a harrowing journey here on a boat. Like they thought she was dead. Her mom literally shoved food down her throat to keep her alive until she got here because there was so much sickness going on the boat and anything. But she immigrated to America as a young child and then in her older days went into the entertainment industry. So it was just kind of like a background story. Yeah. Also along those lines, Amanda also let us know, we talked about the unfair working conditions that the Power Rangers of various generations had to go through, but mostly the first generation, which is the Mighty Morphin. And Austin St. John, who is the OG Red Ranger, he was like the leader. Thuy and Walter Jones, who was the Black Ranger, actually left the show because they were striking against unfair working conditions.
Wow.
But the interesting thing about that is they had planned to walk out with all the Rangers.
Oh, wow.
But the other 3 changed their mind and didn't go and stayed there.
Wow.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, like, how much of an impact it would have had, because it sounds like they just replaced those 3. Would it have improved conditions if it was all 6? But also, these are young people.
I know.
Not making a lot of money. So I kind of understand the 3 that didn't leave.
I know.
Like, I get it.
It's tricky.
You know, it's tricky.
Well, and so Amanda was saying that she thinks Austin St. John really like paved the way for future Rangers to have better working conditions. Good. So we just wanted to go ahead and acknowledge that. Also, random. When I was like, what did he look like? I was trying to like picture him in my brain. So when I Googled his name, apparently like a few days ago, he was arrested for FBI fraud for alleged COVID small business claims. Like, you know how they were giving money to like small business? Yes. Him and like 18 people
oh my God,
were arrested for fraud.
Okay.
So
Austin St. John and friends.
I was like, do I mention that? I'm like, yes.
I mean, right. It's just like anything.
It is.
People are good and bad.
Correct.
And just like the good and evil in the Power Rangers.
And I mean, the good things you do, you know, are not taken away when you make a mistake.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely.
And also, I just wanted to throw back in there because we haven't said it in a few episodes. We still have some free stickers, everybody.
We do.
If you are a new listener to the podcast, you may have missed that when we said it way back. We have some really fun free stickers of our logo. If you want 1 or 2, just send us your address in a DM on our socials, or you can email us at the longest email address ever.
It's very long.
I am so sorry about that. Give me one job, and that's what I do, which is generationinbetweenpodcast@gmail.com. Say that 3 times fast. So.
No, there's not enough time. We're trying to keep these to like an hour.
I know.
Hour 20,
all right. So. Katie, you have any circle back shout outs?
No, you hit all the ones I had for today. I also just wanted to remind everybody, leave us reviews wherever you're listening. That helps us a lot. We've had people find us because of our reviews and like tell us like, oh yeah, I was looking up this topic or that topic and I read, you know, what other people had to say, or you had a bunch of 5-star reviews. So I listened to you. So that actually really helps. If you've already done that, thank you so much. And we're also on Patreon. $8 a month. You can join our club, which is growing, and we've got all sorts of
2 members.
Yes, I was going to say it doubled, but
it did double. Sorry,
it technically did. Did. I am the math of this show, so
somebody's got to do it.
You know, but yeah, join us over there. We've got lots of fun stuff coming up, and oh man, there's some stuff this fall you guys don't want to miss. So
I know.
Anyway, okay, great. So
all right, so you ready? So okay, before we get going, I know we do have a lot of young listeners that may not know what is the Brat Pack. What are they even talking about?
Right.
Like, they are confused. So I'm going to tell you all just a really quick synopsis of what the Brat Pack is, and then we'll talk about who is in it. So the Brat Pack was a group of young actors and actresses who starred in many, many coming-of-age films together in the 1980s, mostly mid to late 80s. The term was coined in 1985 by New York Magazine writer David Bloom after he witnessed a few of the actors, which was Emilio Estevez, Judd Nelson, and Rob Lowe, kind of being mobbed by fans when they were out for the night at Hard Rock Cafe in Los Angeles, which is just so Hollywood. I love it, in the 80s. And we'll talk more about that article in just a few minutes, because that's what the documentary is about, pretty much. And the term is a play on the Rat Pack from the 50s and 60s, which was Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, Joey Bishop, and somebody else I couldn't remember.
And we didn't look it up. So just deal with it. Just deal with it.
There's a blank space after that comma. So, Katie, so tell me, what did you know about the Brat Pack before you watched the documentary?
Kind of tertiary things.
Okay.
Just that was a name for basically these really famous Hollywood actors and actresses from the mid to late 80s. So the movies, like the John Hughes movies.
Yeah.
And Emilio Estevez, like I knew most of the ones that were involved in it. But what's weird is like I don't typically, and we'll get into this from the documentary, I don't typically associate Matthew Broderick with that group.
I know.
Even though he's like part of like that whole thing. So it's kind of interesting how like some people you automatically think of with them and then some people you don't. But yeah, I've always like any of those, like Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, even like The Outsiders, St. Elmo's Fire, like any of the young people that were involved in those and became stars, Molly Ringwald.
Yes.
Just always Ali Sheedy. Yeah. All of them. I just and just kind of knowing, oh yeah, that's who those people are. That's what they mean when people say that. But that's kind of it.
Yeah. I had no idea where the term came from. I actually thought it was a positive. Like which is dumb because saying somebody's a brat is not a compliment. So like I don't know why I thought that. But I had no idea where it originated. You know, I had a sister who was 7 years older than me. So I saw a bunch of movies in the mid to late 80s that I probably should not have been watching then, but I loved them. Like I was obsessed. So I definitely knew about the Brat Pack because I was obsessed. Like one of my number one favorite movies of all time is The Breakfast Club. And we talked about that on Dawson.
We did.
The last time we did Dawson. Is it problematic now? A lot of it, yes. But I still really like the movie. Yeah. It's like my number one. I had a poster up in college. Like my sister and I watched it a lot. So I knew all about the Brat Pack. But here's the thing. We're going to talk about right now who is actually in the Brat Pack. Because like you were saying, like I feel like it's kind of confusing because it is. Because it depends on who you ask. Even in the documentary, they're like, who the hell is in the Brat Pack?
Right.
So nobody was like 100% sure on who the official members were, but there were 8 actors mentioned in that original article that I told you about.
Okay.
And it was these following people. It was Emilio Estevez, which it kind of starts with him, which Andrew McCarthy mentions in the documentary, because that article was really
about him.
Yeah. So Emilio Estevez, Judd Nelson, Andrew McCarthy, Ali Sheedy, Demi Moore, Rob Lowe, Molly Ringwald, and Anthony Michael Hall.
Oh.
He was never mentioned in the documentary.
That's weird.
Yeah. And some people question if he was in it or if he was just adjacent, but he was in that original article.
Huh.
Yeah. And so we're going to talk about him later in my notes because I did go into a Google dive about this.
Yeah. It's weird that they didn't mention
They didn't even say his name because they did say, like, basically, y'all, in this documentary, which we're going to talk about in a second. Or should we do it now? Tell them what it's about.
Yeah.
We'll just go ahead and skip ahead.
Yeah. So Andrew McCarthy, who's in those 8 names you just mentioned, I think he says he's 58 or 59. He says his age a couple times.
But that's probably about right.
And he looks exactly the same.
Oh my
just
God.
like an older version of himself.
The cutest.
He's adorable. Completely adorable.
So
Loved
cute.
him. And so he basically decides that he's going to, I don't know if like reclaim is the right word, but revisit,
yeah.
this period of time that these people and then the adjacent people all really experienced, which was a very unique thing to them, which was, you know, that they were these rising stars in Hollywood at a time when Hollywood was really catering to like teenagers and youth culture, and that, you know, in their brains, they were working hard and they were deserving of the fame. And then this article comes out essentially saying, you know, they don't really deserve all this. They haven't acted long enough. They aren't like good enough. They're brats. They're spoiled.
Entitled.
They're entitled. And so it sort of took the wind out of a lot of their... and that's one thing we'll have to talk about because some of their careers, like it didn't seem to really affect. But Andrew McCarthy said that like it really like tanked his,
right?
Because then they wouldn't like want to audition together for stuff, and so it was really this kind of. So he's literally calling members of the like Emilio Estevez and saying things like, "Oh, I haven't seen him since the premiere of St. Elmo's Fire."
Right?
I was so surprised.
Girl, me too.
I was like, literally, these people haven't talked to each other,
right? Because part of the allure, I think, of the Brat Pack was you thought they were just best friends and hung out all the time, like the Rat Pack, because the Rat Pack, they really did. They hung out together. They were friends, and but what you come to find out in the documentary is that's not necessarily true. Most of them haven't spoken. And like Katie was saying, when he called Emilio and he was going to his house, he's like, I haven't seen him since the premiere of St. Elmo's Fire. Like,
that's wild.
Wild.
Yeah. And so it's just one of those things where immediately I was like, wow, this is a perfect example of a thing I think I understand that I don't.
And I think maybe a lot of the American public didn't.
Right.
And that's and that I think is why he decided to make the documentary.
Agree.
But not everybody wanted to talk to him. He talked to Emilio was first, and who I thought was kind of rude. Like, he was not very...
You didn't think he was nice?
Not rude to him. Right. I felt like he just still had a very big chip on his shoulder. Like, I felt like everybody else that talked about it was like, yeah, it was kind of a negative, well, except Rob Lowe. But they were like, I know. It was like...
Who's never negative ever.
I know.
I have a note on that. I'm like, the optimism of Rob Lowe is just like, springs eternal.
I know. And so, but I feel like he just still... I don't know. I got a different energy from Emilio than I did from the others.
Agreed.
I felt very different.
Very.
But okay, so let me rewind for a second because we talked about who's in the Brat Pack. So what movies technically are part of the quote unquote Brat Pack movies? Again, if you Google that, you're going to find different lists everywhere. I even went to like Roger Ebert of Siskel and Ebert movie critic fame. He had a list and I was like, what? That does not seem right. Like, you know, because I was like, that's not a Brat Pack movie. So here's some. So to be part of the Brat Pack, it is generally agreed that you were essentially required to be in one of two 1985 movies, which was, can you guess the two?
Okay. Breakfast Club.
Yep, that's
St. Elmo's Fire. Yeah.
Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire.
Before I watched this documentary, I might not have known the answer to that. I could have guessed.
Yeah, I think you would have figured it out because Emilio, Judd, and Allie were in both.
Okay.
They were in both of those movies.
Right.
So here's some other ones that were on a list. Class from 1983. The Outsiders, like you mentioned, 83. 16 Candles, 84. Pretty in Pink, 86. About Last Night, which I totally forgot about.
Me too.
I saw Demi Moore and Rob Lowe are in that. 86. And then there was more. Those are just a few that I put down. So I feel like it's like a whole Venn diagram situation, maybe.
Yes. Overlapping, but not really. And we'll get into this, but there's a part where Leah Thomas is like, I'm Brat Pack adjacent.
And John Cryer.
Cryer.
I never thought he was in it anyway.
But I mean, he was in Pretty in Pink.
But what else was he
in? I don't know. Maybe nothing.
It's like the friend that was in Weird Science with Anthony Michael Hall.
Right.
But like Matthew Broderick, I never would have thought he
I wouldn't have either. Yeah.
Right? So I don't know. Anyway, so something that you mentioned, like when these movies were coming out, that this was an interesting piece of movie making history that I did not realize. The 80s were the first time that like teens / young adults were like the focus of movie after movie after movie. It hadn't been done before like that. So that was, and now it's all the time. Like, we have, especially in the summer, like there's tons of teen movies. And when we were, you know, in the 90s, Can't Hardly Wait and all that.
Yeah.
But this was kind of the start of them being the focus and having relatable stories.
Yes.
Like you don't have a lot of money to go to prom and you want, I mean, of course, great. Oh, sorry. My nose bonked the microphone. Of course, we don't all like fall in love with a rich guy and, you know, he falls in love back. But some of the pieces were relatable, right?
Absolutely. And I really loved in the documentary, and this is later on in it, when he goes to visit Timothy Hutton
Oh,
who
yes.
is not in the Brat Pack, but if that name sounds familiar and you don't quite remember who he was in the movie Ordinary People,
yes,
which he won an Oscar for.
Yes.
And Sally Field won an Oscar for that one too. And it's a drama, very, very serious, whatever. And he was like the first teen or one of the first legit teenagers to win an award like that. And Andrew McCarthy, rightfully so, kind of credits him with that and says, look, the fact that happened kind of paved the way for all these other movies and for studios to be like, oh, yeah, people do want to see teenagers.
They are valuable.
You know, even though they were totally different movies from what was happening in Ordinary People. And I loved that Andrew McCarthy went to his like bee farm or whatever.
That was so cute.
And they were just like sitting in rocking chairs, like out on this big property, just talking about the state of things. Yeah. And I just thought that was such a cool thing for like Andrew McCarthy or whoever to kind of connect.
Yeah.
And be like, it wasn't just like, oh, Emilio Estevez started it. It was like, no, it actually started with this person or maybe even someone else, but like it was before us.
Yeah.
But those little things kind of chip away at what the culture wants to see and capitalism and what people will pay money for.
Yeah, consumerism.
You know,
and all the things.
So I just thought that was such a cool like twist to kind of throw in there.
It was.
Yeah.
And, you know, going back to when the article came out and they showed clips in the documentary of like, you know, because people constantly asked them about it. Mm-hmm. And you could tell with each consecutive interview clip they showed, the more annoyed they would be. Did you notice that?
I did.
And the reason I think that they all looked at it, at first, I have to admit, when I was watching the documentary, I was like, oh my God, whiny Hollywood people. Like, you're like, oh, it was so, and then I was like, well, actually, I do understand that because as a young performer, all you want is to be taken seriously in your craft. Like, no matter what you're doing, whether you're dancing, you're acting, you're singing. As a young performer, you want people to see you as a valid source of entertainment that is, you know, valued and seen wholly, right?
Yes.
Not like HOLY, but
wholly.
You know what I mean?
Well, and like in a lot of the cases, like Andrew McCarthy, for example, he went to NYU. He talks about how he didn't graduate from there, but like they were on paths that they wanted to do this for life.
Yes.
And that was kind of what I was saying. Like Emilio Estevez has. Rob Lowe has. Demi Moore has.
Yeah.
But then like Andrew McCarthy really didn't.
I know.
And, you know, so it's interesting how it fractures different ways. And even John Cryer, who is adjacent, you know, he was on 3.5 Men and like 2.5. It's just 2.5.
But that took him a while though to get back there.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
So, and I think, and Anthony Michael Hall, he's still acting and performing.
Yeah.
So I do understand that they felt like they were stereotyped, dismissed, pigeonholed, all of those things. And I was like, oh, okay. And yeah, you're being called a brat and you're like in your 20s, right?
Well, I wrote down in my notes that like everything kind of upset me. And I felt like they were collectively being bullied.
Yeah.
Really.
And then let's jump ahead too and talk about that writer. What did you think when everyone, Andrew actually goes and talks to the writer.
And I wondered as I was watching if that would happen because I was like, this feels a little one-sided. I mean, it is the story of the Brat Pack members. And so they just kind of saved that for the end.
They did.
So once I got to the end, I was like, oh, okay. I felt like the writer, he was saying, I didn't feel like he felt bad about it at all.
I don't either. I felt like he talked in circles.
And then when Andrew would be like, so you still stand by it, or you think it wasn't harmful, he'd be like, oh, well, I don't know. It kind of depends how you see it. And I just felt like he wasn't giving him, and then they gave each other a hug when they were leaving, which was kind of awkward.
Right. I felt weird.
And in the hug, Andrew McCarthy says, would you take it back?
I know.
And he was like, oh, no, probably not.
Like after Andrew had just told him like how they felt about it. He was just like, no. I felt like his attitude was just like, well, that's the price you pay for fame.
Yes.
I felt like he was just like, meh.
Which we've talked about before. The abuse of fame.
Right.
And I think that's what I didn't like about well, I like the documentary, but like what made me really mad as I was watching it, the reminder of the youth and the cultural bullying, and then this guy being like, oh, that's the abuse of fame. And it made me feel very protective.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the other thing.
Oh.
The writer was like, oh, how old were you? And Andrew McCarthy's like 22. And the writer's like, well, I was only 29. I'm like, 29?
Yeah.
Excuse me. That is 22 and 29 are not the same
They're
thing.
not the same.
And he was like, when you're young, that's the stuff you do. And I'm thinking, 20 freaking 9?
Yeah.
No, sir.
Yeah.
And also, like, you were the one being reckless, not them.
Right.
They were showing up to the movie sets and doing the things they were supposed to do. And if they were drinking, they were of age. Like,
and they weren't working while they were out drinking. Like, they were having fun, like 22-year-olds do.
So to be like, we were the same age. You were 22 and I was 29 and we all make mistakes. I was like, that is not the same thing.
And you know what? I almost got the sense of jealousy from him.
Yeah.
Did you?
It both in the article, which I read, and the way he was acting to him. Like, it was very much like, and one of the I don't know if it was a casting director, they had a few people like that said that. Yeah. She was like, well, the writer was jealous of you guys. And that's what it was.
Yeah. And I totally think she's right.
Oh, and then the writer kept defending the term Brat Pack. He's like, oh, it's, when you have a clever blah, blah, blah. And Andrew McCarthy's like, oh, do you think that was clever? He's like, yeah, it really was. And
I mean, it was a clever name.
But I was just
like it wasn't positive.
Wrong audience to be like, wasn't I smart for like coming up with that thing that now you're doing a whole ass documentary on because it like hurt you so badly?
Right.
Wasn't that really clever of me? I was like,
so
dude.
Smart. I mean, I will say the play on words was very smart, but it wasn't even his idea, really. Remember? Because he said that he was out to eat with friends and they overate and the guy was like, oh, we're the fat pack.
Yeah.
Remember?
I remember.
And he's like, oh, I thought it, but play on words. But also, when have you ever called someone a brat and meant it as a compliment?
Yeah. No, never.
Like, if my kids are getting out of line and acting entitled, I'm like, you're acting like a spoiled brat right now. I know that's not nice, everybody, but I'm sorry. Sometimes it happens. But like, that's never like a positive statement.
Right. I will say, like, I feel like maybe because of what the Brat Pack, for example, went through, young people nowadays, I'm thinking of like Taylor Swift, which she's older now, but I'm thinking of when she was younger in her career, Olivia Rodrigo, people like that. And especially with social media, I mean, they're constantly called names and entitled and whatever. And I just feel like they're equipped to kind of be like, whatever. But this was at a time where this was all new.
Yeah.
And I really liked one thing they said, and you and I have talked about this on the show, where they say, Malcolm Gladwell.
I love him.
I love him so much. So Malcolm Gladwell is essentially like a culture writer. Yeah. Like he's an expert
sociology.
on sociology. Yeah. Has really nothing to do with the Brat Pack, but Andrew McCarthy went to speak with him like just about the phenomenon of it and all of that. And that moment in time and where we are now. And Malcolm Gladwell said that at that time, culture was so mainstream.
Yes. Yes.
And so if one person thought that they were spoiled brats, then literally everyone did. And I know it wasn't literally everyone, but still. Whereas now, he said, there are no longer cultural touch points like that. Everything is fractured. So you've got the group of people who think Taylor Swift is the B word and trying to take over the country and in cahoots with China. But then like you've got the overwhelming majority of people who don't think that.
Or some people just don't care.
Or some people are like, I don't like her, know? Okay. Yeah. But this was a time where it was like, the vitriol was all sort of in one bucket.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess it's good there wasn't social media because that would have been even worse.
I know.
But like that scene where they were on Phil Donahue, which for our younger listeners, Phil Donahue was a talk show. I never liked Phil Donahue. And now when I watch clips for things we were doing for this podcast, I'm like, oh, why didn't anyone ever watch this?
He just looked like an old grandpa. He wasn't even exciting.
And he was always very condescending.
He was.
To his guests.
He was very,
always. But so they have Brat Pack people there. They're probably promoting a movie or something. And he says, well, what do you think about it? It's just that all of us feel like you're going to be spoiled. And you're going to be, and I just wrote, gross.
Yeah.
Who the F cares?
I know.
Dude, Phil Donahue and the rest of the country.
Do you think that he felt like he could say that to them because they were young? Like he wouldn't have said that to somebody older.
I was getting so mad.
Yeah, that's not right.
Because I was like, if my teens or just young adults that I know in my life were being spoken to like that, I'd be busting through the wall like Kool-Aid Man. Like, shut the F up. These are children.
Right.
Or young adults.
Well, they were young adults, but yes.
But like, yeah. Oh, and then that's the other thing the writer said. He's like, well, they weren't minors. I would have never said it about minors. Like you're the what? Like, that's,
I know.
What does that have to do with anything?
What is that called when people do that?
Gaslighting.
Yes. And also red herring. Is that a red herring?
Yes.
Yeah.
Where you're just trying to change the subject.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like anyway, so the writer, everyone, you'll see.
You'll see.
I know we're talking a lot about things, but you should watch the documentary.
You should.
It's really good.
And the music is great.
Oh, yes.
And the transition,
clips.
they're playing clips. They found so many that fit.
I know.
Like so him and Allie would be talking and then they'd show and they'd be like, oh yeah, like in real time being like, oh, you know, we have this connection because of this. And then they have a clip from a movie where they're like, we'll always be connected.
I know.
And I was like, whoa, like this is so wild that they found all this. And, you know, they look exactly the same, just like 50-something-year-old versions of themselves.
Correct.
And so it's just like so wild to see. And one thing I wrote just as a general overarching thing, I felt bad for them, so there's that. But I had a little bit of like sadness watching it.
Yeah.
There was so much youth.
So much youth.
So much youth. And all the clips back to back.
I know.
And then them like talking about different things. And I just felt like almost a sadness.
I know.
For my
same.
own
Yeah.
youth.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, oh, because like these people who were like the epitome of young whatever got old, I'm also getting
they're not
old.
that much older than we are.
They're not. And my kids are going to be that.
I know.
It just kind of started to spiral.
Right.
That like how beautiful and precious youth is. And then when it's attacked for simply being youth. I know. Which is what this is, in my opinion. It just made me really upset.
Yeah.
Like more than I thought I would be.
Yeah. I'm sad that he didn't get to talk to Molly and Judd.
Because Anthony.
And Anthony wasn't mentioned, and I'll talk about that in a second. Okay. Because I feel like when I think of the Brat Pack, she is who I think of first.
Absolutely.
I think of Andrew McCarthy second. Then I think of Judd Nelson. Then I think of Emilio. I don't even think of Emilio first, even though I should.
Neither.
But it made me sad. But I'm not going to spoil this for you guys. But did you love how it ended?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not going to tell you guys.
So good.
I love it.
Wished we would have.
I know.
But it was a really good ending. Yeah.
So, but I am sad. And I mean, he says on there that like he's calling all these people like, in the beginning, like he's like, okay, I'm just going to call up like Rob Lowe. I'm just going to call up Molly. And he actually tells, I think Allie, maybe he's like, well, Molly said, you know, she just doesn't want to go back. She only wants to keep going forward. Yeah. And I think he never did say Judd said that too, but I think it was probably the same. So now I Googled why wasn't Anthony Michael Hall mentioned in the Brats? Maybe he was in clips. But they never talked about him. Like they talked about Molly. Right. They talked about Judd, but they never talked about him.
Weird.
So I did go down the interwebs rabbit holes as we do here on Generation in Between. Because I wanted to see like WTF.
How very not 1985 of us.
I know. So here's the thing. He was asked recently in an interview about it. Okay. He was asked by the interviewer, like, did you watch it? Were you asked to participate? And he said yes. He said, the interviewer said, did Andrew McCarthy ask you to participate? And this was his quote. He said, he did. And I can go on record saying I politely declined because I'm always making new stuff and always moving forward and looking ahead. So that was my own impetus. Is that right?
Impetus, okay. Yeah.
For why I chose not to be a part of that.
Okay.
And then he also said this about the term Brat Pack. He said, to be fair, I never really paid any attention to the article. It never really meant anything to me. Mm-hmm. Like the Rat Pack is interesting to me, but the Brat Pack thing, it was just a moniker. Maybe it speaks more to the writer at that time, if anything.
It does. It's like when they say someone's like saying mean stuff about you.
Right.
And we say to our kids, well, that says more about them than you.
Right. Facts.
This is, and someone on there said, maybe it was Demi. She said, she didn't even say the writer's name, but she's like, the writer was just trying to get their next job.
Right.
Period. Although
I know.
And I was like, oh yeah, she's right. But then when I saw that scene where he was in, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's deeper than that. Unless over the years, he's just become very defensive about it.
Probably.
Could be. And at the time, he really didn't mean it like whatever way it was portrayed.
I think he was whatever he was doing, he was definitely trying to be sensational. Right?
Yeah.
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 I mean, he was trying to be sensational. And he definitely wasn't doing it in a positive manner.
No.
But I will say, not to play devil's advocate here, but I feel like, I mean, if he wouldn't have written that, if they would not have been termed that, would they be as iconic?
Yeah.
as they are now.
Well, Rob Lowe said that.
Right, I know.
When he went to his house, he, because he's just he's like, okay, I wrote eternal optimist.
Can we just stop for 1 second? And please let's discuss his attractiveness just for a minute. We're not that kind of podcast, but sometimes we are.
We're trying not to objectify.
No.
I wrote literally in my notes, Benjamin Button. I mean, he doesn't look like 18, but...
Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about this in 2 parts.
Okay.
All right. Number 1, I was watching this on the TV because, I can't watch everything on my main TV in the living room, right? There's some things you can't watch when anybody can just walk in the door, right?
Yeah.
This you can, everyone. There are some, if you have really small children and you're weird about language, they do have some language, but there's nothing.
Yeah, no, it's safe.
Anyway, so Cooper, my 11-year-old, was watching it with me. And I just, the part where they're interviewing Rob Lowe, I'm like, man, he used to be so cute. Like, he was so cute. Oh my gosh. He was just, because they kept showing clips. I was like, he was just so attractive. And he's so cute. And Cooper looks at me and he's like, well, he still is. And I'm like, actually, yes. Like,
good point.
He's
Cooper.
like, don't say used to. I was like, yeah. And even my husband, I was like, Rob Lowe, like, and he's like, I know, he still looks really good. So we all had this mutual household admiration for Rob Lowe. But he takes care of, he's a former addict, but he takes care of himself now. He's very clean and all of that.
It's
with
almost
his eating and
like that made him appreciate his body more once he was able to get sober. Yeah.
And I've read his books. I don't know if you've read them. They're entertaining. He can be a little full of himself at times. But I mean, if I looked like that, I probably would be too.
And was as successful as he's been. Yeah, for sure.
The other thing we noticed, speaking of appearance, Troy, my husband, said to me, he's like, what's interesting is the men are all on here. They're like, all these people are around the same age. And the men are just aging naturally and look wonderful, right? Because Andrew McCarthy, we just said,
he looks so cute. Gray hair.
John Cryer looks great.
Looks like he's in his 50s.
Right.
And looks great.
They look great. He said, but all the women, even Ali Sheedy didn't have it too much, but then I looked and I said, I think she may have had Botox. No judgment there.
Right.
But he said all the women have, even the like publicists and stuff like that, he was like, have had some kind of work done.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it looks good or bad. I'm just saying the beauty expectations are BS.
Yeah. Yeah, they all looked great. But you could tell that, like, that there was some work done on different
levels. And I'm not hating on that. Listen,
heck no.
Full on for you do what you need to do to feel good about yourself as long as you're in a healthy headspace, right?
Right.
But it's just not fair.
No.
Uh-oh. We have stuff
I should
happening.
Put this on Do Not Disturb. So my daughter Tegan has messenger kids.
Oh, yes.
And so everything comes through my phone because she's 9. So like, I don't know. You have to approve everyone, so it's pretty safe. I could probably take it off my phone and it would be totally fine. But I forgot to put this on Do Not Disturb. So when it's done ringing...
Oh, ha! Cute.
I shall set it to that. But go on.
So you're her publicist, I guess.
I am.
You're her publicist.
Like Tegan's publicist.
Yeah.
That kind of is.
So that's just, it was an interesting dynamic to see. Also, what I thought was interesting too, and I mentioned this before when we were watching Dawson's Creek, when they showed the clips of the 80s and these young actors, they look like real people, like beautiful people.
Beautiful.
But I just feel like it was so much more. I mean, lots of hairspray, lots of makeup, but that's real people were doing that.
Heck
and walking around the streets.
That was the trend.
Right?
Those were the trends. Yeah.
So it makes me sad for women that's what it's come. Like we can't just age like men can.
Yeah.
Well, we can. Lies. We can, but
we totally
expectations are not
listeners,
the same.
I got bangs.
Yeah, they're
tired. Cute. They're super cute. So I'm not complaining. But I was just so tired of looking at my forehead. And is it because I really didn't like it? Or is it because I was like, oh, I therefore look like an older person because my forehead naturally is wrinkling the way that it should based on my age and like the fact that I'm a very expressive person.
Yeah.
But I was tired of looking at it. And so I cut bangs so you don't have to look at it, and that's fine. That's my choice.
Yeah.
It's hair. I could have also gone out and got Botox or a facelift and that would have been fine too. But it does make you wonder like where it like all stems from. And I mean, again, no judgment, but in the case of Demi Moore, like she looks like the age of her 20-year-old daughter.
I know.
And that's fine.
And she looks beautiful and great.
She looks great.
But it's like, I almost wonder if she wasn't in the public eye, if she would feel the same. Like because I feel like she probably thought she had to do that. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm not in her brain.
We don't know. Yeah,
but I'm just saying, I just noticed that again. And I'm like, man, I don't like, because my husband's like, always like, well, you can just age and blah, blah, blah. I was like, I know, but it's not the same.
It's not.
Like, people will look at you at 50 with salt and pepper hair and think how distinguished and hot you are. If I had salt and pepper hair, which I did try and do before, guys, and I did not look good. I'm not one of those people who can do that yet. Okay.
Not yet. Yeah.
And you know, no makeup and no Botox and none of the things with age spots and whatever. Nobody would think I was distinguished. They might think I looked nice for 50.
Like, oh yeah, you look great, or
correct,
that looks good on you, or whatever. But yeah, it's definitely, and you see it even in that. Yeah, for sure. I know she didn't mean it like this, but they had this one author on there named Susanna who seemed younger. She seemed like maybe our age.
Oh yeah. The author that had like a fan book about the Brat Pack. Yes. Yeah. Which was fun. They included her.
That was cool.
I liked that.
That was cool. She was saying that she remembers like watching like the VHS of them or whatever. So she probably was like our age. Like the movies have been out for a while that are included in this Brat Pack thing, and that it was really nice to see people like her.
Yeah,
like people. Kind of, I think that encompasses everything, like the struggles, but also looking like normal people that maybe go to your high school,
right,
or live next door to you, like the things that you're dealing with at that age. And so I just thought that was really, really cool. And she also said that it was one of the first times that films in Hollywood were taking the lives of young people seriously.
Yes.
And I loved that.
Yes.
Because we've talked about that.
Oh, yeah.
You can go, oh, teenagers, like roll your eyes or whatever. Yeah. Okay, fine. Like, it's hard to parent teenagers. Yes. Teenagers can be difficult. We understand. But teenagers are awesome.
They are.
Young people are. Like, there's a lot of good there. And so when she said, like, you know, it's not all, oh, you're just whatever, you don't understand, or you don't know what it's like to be sad until blah, 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 blah. Like, these are developmentally appropriate things that teenagers go through, and they're actually sad sometimes. And and it's not for us as adults to be like, well, you just wait until this happens, then you're really going to be sad.
I mean, sometimes you have to check them.
True.
Sometimes you do. True. But yes, you have to acknowledge their feelings. Like,
yes. And I just thought that was a really cool thing. And she also said it was the first time parents were pushed to the back.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why those movies, now granted, like I said, there's plenty of problematic stuff because these are predominantly white people in the movies. And if they are not, then they're usually stereotyped, etc. There's obviously at that time, they were mostly cisgender heterosexual people as well. So granted, that being said, there's plenty of problems, but I think now I forgot where I was going with that. What were we talking about?
We were talking about
my brain just went
taking things seriously.
Things seriously. Yeah. And you know, there was teenage stuff like crushes and parties and money issues and losing parents and like, you know, or like, and I don't mean, well, no, because they did deal with that in some of the movies. And even in St. Elmo's Fire, it was like what happens after college because they were a little bit older in that movie. And it was these college friends who graduated. And then it's like, oh my God, we're like adults. And each one of them, have you watched that movie?
I have never seen that movie.
You got to. It's one of my faves.
When I was watching it, the documentary, I was like, I have never seen that movie.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to have to
You know what we should totally do one day when we have a moment, which who knows when that will be, 5 years from now. Yeah. We need to go spend the night at a hotel and just binge watch our favorite. Like, I will tell you my favorite movies from that time, and you should do that. And we should just sit there.
I love that idea.
Because in real life, who has time to watch a movie uninterrupted most days?
You had me at hotel.
I know.
But then, like, movies also sound great.
So one day we're going to do that, guys.
One day we're going to do that.
And that would be a great episode, too.
That would be a fun one.
Anyway, so what else? Like, what else did you notice?
So I liked when they were talking about, and this is kind of a callback to one of our episodes on movie soundtracks. They were talking about how important soundtracks were to movies.
Yes.
And if you think about it, as you mentioned, like we mentioned in our intro, when you think of The Breakfast Club, when you think of, what was it called? Something Wonderful, or wasn't there another one with a name like that? Some Kind of Wonderful.
Some Kind of Wonderful.
And like
Say Anything,
Pretty in
that's
Pink,
another one.
any of those.
Yes.
You do immediately start thinking of songs.
100%.
And, you know, that's still something that carries over. But like how important those were as cultural references. I thought that was really cool. And they did sort of talk about the white only approach, which was interesting because it was like, oh, we need to address this, but then it was not really.
They didn't really do it.
They had like someone of color speaking about it, and that person was kind of like, oh, I don't really care because I was used to it. Everyone was white, and I was like, I don't know about that.
I know, yeah.
Like maybe just don't include it. And then they were like, oh, well, you know, actually, the suburbs of Chicago in 85 were mostly white. You had one black kid in class, and I'm like, I guess, but like that's not really. Huh?
Right.
Like, that's not really an excuse. I get it. Whatever. These movies are a product of their time. But I just thought, I was like, this isn't really like a fully fleshed out idea right now that they're like facing. They're like, let's talk to this person.
To this one singular.
This one person. And then he, she, they,
Speaks
whatever is going to be like, oh, it didn't bother me. Oh, cool. Let's move on. I thought that was weird.
Yeah, that was weird. I forgot about that until just a second.
Yeah, that was really strange to me.
I agree.
I really liked when Demi Moore, the whole section with her.
Yeah.
And how she was just talking about, you know, you can tell she's probably, I mean, they probably all have been through a lot of therapy and stuff. And she was just kind of saying that sometimes when the gauntlet's put down, and someone's like, you are this, and you are like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
That's what you need to prove that you're not. Not that you should have to do that.
Right.
But, and that really clicked with me. Like some of these young people were able to do that and some weren't.
Yeah.
You know,
it's hard.
And I just thought that was really, really cool. And then they had this great part where Andrew's getting a hamburger from a food truck.
Yes.
And all you hear is the person's voice who's like serving. You don't see the person.
I loved that so much.
And the person's like, what are you filming?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, this thing about the Brat Pack. Have you heard of them? I don't know.
Because they were young. You could tell they were a young, like, teenager.
Yeah. And they didn't know. And then he's just like sitting there because it was a really cool stark comparison. Like if Andrew McCarthy was getting a hamburger and sitting outside in 1985, he'd be swarmed. But he's just sitting alone at this little table. The person who sold him the hamburger, like,
zero clue,
didn't know who he was, which is like, oh, you're filming something cool. What is it? Oh, I don't know who that is.
Because it's LA, so it probably happens all the time. Yeah.
And so I just thought, you know, good for Andrew McCarthy to be like, yeah, I'm kind of, I mean, he's not, but like, yeah, I'm sort of insignificant. So let's like show a scene like that. I would argue that he's not. And I think it's really cool that he revisited this and took this on.
I think that was cool. Did seem very humble though.
Very, yeah.
I think that, and I'm sorry, I just can't get over, like I've always thought, even back in the day, that he had the most expressive smile and his little smirk. Yes. Everybody that knows Andrew McCarthy is envisioning it right now. I thought that was what made him so likable. In movies, even when he did something crappy, like in 16 or Pretty in Pink, you know, you still just like loved him. He just has that, and he still has it. I mean, he's got some gray hairs and some wrinkles, but it's there. Like that Andrew McCarthy. I was like, I would like to be friends with him.
I really was thinking as I was watching it, and maybe it's the premise of the documentary because he's literally calling people in this group to connect them. But I'm like, he seems like a connector.
He does.
He seems like the one who's like, let's get the gang back together, or even just in real life. Like, oh, let me give you the number of this person that can help you, or that person, which Danny and I have talked about how we feel like we're connectors, you know? How some people just have that natural ability for that. And he really struck me as that kind of person.
Well, right, because nobody else has done the documentary. And how many years has this been? Right?
30.
Now, that doesn't mean they haven't been approached, because I guarantee you, people in the Brat Pack have probably been approached a bajillion times since 1985.
Easy.
Which is probably why Molly and Judd were like, Like I told everybody.
I already told you a million times now.
I ain't doing this.
And I think if it wasn't Andrew McCarthy or a different member of the so-called Brat Pack, it wouldn't have hit the same way.
I agree.
Like if it was just some documentary filmmaker, the fact that he's literally like calling people. He's like, oh, I had to get so-and-so's number from their agent because I don't have their number. Right. But I have Demi's number. But I have, Rob's on his way to Orlando. I'll catch him next time or whatever. Like it was just, it felt, the first realization is, oh, they're not actually all like best friends hanging out all the time. Yeah. And then the second realization is like, they're normal people. Yeah. Like, and yeah. And I loved when he was with Rob Lowe and Rob like kind of was feigning being offended. Like it was just a funny moment. He's like, yeah, I still meet people. And they're like, well, I'm kind of an Andrew guy. I thought that was so cute.
And Andrew was like, okay.
Sure, they say that.
Oh, that was funny.
That was really adorable. I loved that. Funny. And just generally, even though you could tell they had varying degrees of feelings about it, like Emilio seemed very standoffish. I mean, even the way they framed that, they had like a counter between them.
And Rob was like next to him. To me, was like they were outside around her patio thing. Yeah. Allie, she was on her couch.
Yeah, like in a normal looking apartment, you know. And so, and then him and Timothy Hutton just like sitting on the front porch in rocking chairs. Yeah. But even though they had varying levels of that, they seemed to genuinely still have a connection. Yeah. As like friends, but also as like people who were the only ones in the world who experienced this thing.
Right.
Which is a big thing.
It is.
And I really felt like that came through.
Yeah, I agree.
In the storytelling of this documentary. I thought they did a good job. I mean, maybe some of that's like the nostalgic music or whatever. I know. But I don't know. I really thought that they did a good job with that.
So let's talk about like summation of how we felt. I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought the documentary was great. I thought it was really informative. Mm-hmm. And you can say it's one-sided, but they talked to the writer.
Yeah.
So like,
I was thinking that, and then they talked to the writer. Now, granted, they can edit it any way they want.
Sure.
But I did feel like, generally speaking, his body language, his curtness, his very non-apologetic nature, even if they cut out some of the stuff he might have said, it's still kind of read. I don't know that they like manipulated that. Right. That seemed to genuinely. But also, if you know someone's making a documentary about something, I mean, so, you know, you're going to maybe be defensive. So I get it.
True.
I'm the same. I loved it. I thought the music was great. I loved all the people he talked to. And one line really stood out to me.
Ooh, what?
When Emilio said, in real time, not in a movie, but in real time, he said, we have no control of how we're remembered. Yeah. Wow. Like, dang. That is so true. And if you're a Hamilton fan, right, you have no control who lives, who dies, who tells your story.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's such a good reminder that how we're remembered, first of all, but how we're perceived.
Correct.
We can't control.
You have zero control over
what people say or think about us.
Because you know what I think about when people say stuff like that? You know, you can think about people like you and I see each other all the time. We see each other quite frequently, a couple times a week usually. Mm-hmm. But I could have an interaction with someone and on my worst day ever, where I'm in the worst mood, and that's going to be their perception of me. Yeah. I may never cross their path again, and they're going to be like, that was that bitchy lady with the pink hair, right? Yep. And so you can't control it. Mm-mm. And so you want people to remember you for your whole self, but you have to be okay that you may not be.
Some of that's out of your control.
It is. But all of it you can't control, right?
Totally. And you and I just like recently were talking about this with something specific to my life and me saying, I had an off day or week or whatever, and I think it has affected this thing.
Yeah.
And that was a real time moment for me to be like, but I can't change that happened or potentially what the fallout from that has been. And so I just have to keep moving forward.
I know.
You know? And they do say like, and I try to remember this if I have a encounter with someone who's rude to me or whatever, I try to remember, try to think of people, like if you only know people for their worst moment, that's not fair.
Right.
Like we were talking about this Power Ranger, you know?
Yeah, we were just
like,
saying that.
Okay, yeah, COVID fraud, but also he was trying to help this also good thing happened. And not everyone is going to have a holistic picture of us, even if they see us every day of the week. There are people that are still going to be like, oh, I don't like her.
Right.
You know, or this person's like that. And they're always going to think it no matter how many times after that they see you and you're not like that.
Right.
And they're going to think that. And I try hard not to be that way to other people. I'm always trying not to. You have to be careful because you have to protect yourself from people who are toxic or
facts
trying to hurt you actively. But like that. And I think this was this to me also is a reminder that like words matter.
Yeah.
And for us to be like us, I mean, society collectively, like you said kind of earlier in the episode, and you're like, oh, come on, like Hollywood people, who cares? Like you're in movies, some of you have really
and that's rude. I know.
That feelings are valid.
Yeah.
And words do hurt.
They do. Yeah.
And when you have a whole culture against you,
right,
it does impact lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I thought it was great. If you haven't seen it,
yeah, you need
hopefully,
to.
Like, we really haven't spoiled much. Like,
no, I mean,
and you'll have to get to the end.
Oh, the
there's a little thing at the end. But see what you think.
Yeah.
Because even if you're younger, I would imagine you've heard of or maybe seen parts of The Breakfast Club. You'll appreciate this because it really is a little bit of a snapshot in time.
It is.
Yeah.
And for those of you who love some of the stuff we mentioned, it is like a time capsule. It's so much fun.
So fun.
So, before we go then, bless you.
Thank you.
Before we go, let's chat about that. So I know, as we know, I am the one who watched the most TV and movies as a young kid.
Has been established. Yes.
But I'm dying to know, of the Brat Pack movies that you have seen.
Yes.
Tell us some of them that you have seen and which one you like the most.
Okay. So I have seen Breakfast Club.
Okay.
I have seen Pretty in Pink and 16 Candles. I don't think I know I haven't seen St. Elmo's Fire. Okay. I know Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I guess, isn't included in that, but I have seen that one many times.
Did you see Class?
No, I've never seen Class. Okay. I've seen The Outsiders.
Okay.
I saw that like in school when we read the book.
I know, me too, because we read the book, yeah.
I can't think of others.
Well, okay, so technically not. It's like Brat Pack adjacent. Have you seen Weird Science?
No.
Okay.
But I remember you saying you loved that movie. So when they showed it, I was like, oh my God, Danny likes that movie.
It is very problematic.
Okay.
But Anthony Michael Hall is at some of his best in that movie. Okay. We talked about this a little bit with Carlos. Like, I'm a big Anthony Michael Hall fan. I just thought he was so funny. I love humor, and like, he was so funny. Great.
So funny.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen almost all of them. I haven't seen I think my computer went bye-bye.
Uh-oh.
Oh gosh.
It went to sleep.
Here it is. Here we are. We're on business. Of course, I used to have on VCR tape Breakfast Club and 16 Candles, all of that. They all came to college with me too. And those mostly John Hughes movies is what I would put on when I was working on papers, or like, when you just put stuff on in the background.
Yeah.
So, and Breakfast Club, I swear, if I'm ever looking at, like, we have Hulu Live, so that's the closest I get to like channel surfing.
Yeah.
If it's ever on anywhere, I will stop and watch it.
Yeah.
We went on a weekend trip to St. Augustine, like, as a family back in the fall or whenever that was. When was that? I don't even know. And we were going to bed, and like, I turned the TV on and it was on. I was like, oh, I'm watching this.
Yeah.
Troy was like, you've seen this. But we
all have movies like that. And a random little side note, my mom, who we never watched this kind of stuff when I was growing up, like, ever. But once I was like a teenager and my brothers were a little older and she went back to work, she was a counselor in the juvenile detention system. So she would work with incarcerated young men who, it was kind of a prison, like, it was minimal security. Like, they had to come there for a couple months and like sleep there, and it was like out on a farm and stuff. And so she would meet with all of them to talk about their future and make sure they were on track for school and stuff like that. And she fell in love with Breakfast Club then. So that would have been like late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah. And she would show that movie to them.
Aww.
And they would watch it, and she would always talk about like how much they loved it. Because by then, that like group of young people hadn't necessarily seen it.
Right.
Some of them had, and some of them, especially at that time, had come from homes where maybe they didn't watch a lot of movies, or they didn't have access to cable or TV or whatever. So she would always talk about it. And I was like, you like that movie? And she's like, that movie's so great. My favorite character's so-and-so. And I'm like, wow, this is wild, right?
But I think the thing about the Breakfast Club, and you know what, as I was watching that, I was like, we may have to do episodes like on each movie by themselves. Sure. Like, that could be maybe that should be our next Nostalgic Problematic.
Sure. That'd be fun.
It's an idea. Anyway, we could do a whole thing on them. But the reason why I think people love the Breakfast Club so much is because the whole point of it is you don't really know people based on their label.
I love that.
That's the whole point.
The whole point, yeah.
And you miss out on things if you do that. if you don't leave room to get to know people, and also don't leave room for people who have a label to maybe evolve out of that label as well.
Also that, especially important for young people.
Correct.
Yeah.
And random piece of trivia. I don't know if this is real because I didn't go down a huge fact check, but a couple articles, I saw it in a couple spots. So I'm hoping maybe it is because this is so cool. And as an actor, you'll appreciate this.
Yeah.
You have seen Breakfast Club, right?
Yes, okay. I have. I've seen that one.
So the scene where they're like in their circle and they're doing their confessions.
Yes.
Improvised.
Really?
I don't know for sure. Let me clarify again.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's true, but what I read in a couple articles was that John Hughes told each person the main reason their character was in detention.
Okay.
Okay.
Like, here's why.
Right.
Okay.
And it was their job to come up with the story around it.
Wow.
And I kind of believe that because I know I've read in other things about John Hughes that he really appreciated young people's opinions and thoughts, and he gave them a lot of freedom in character interpretation and stuff like that. So from what I've read about him, I could totally see that. But like, that's one of the most powerful scenes in the movie. And to think that even if just parts of it were improvised by these young actors.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that really just kind of underscores what made me mad in the documentary, that these were very thoughtful, hardworking, collaborative, creative young performers.
Yeah.
And to just be kind of like trivialized the way that it was is upsetting. Yeah. And that's a good example.
Now, I don't know if that's true 100%.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard similar things about his movies. So I would imagine, even if it was just somewhat, even if they worked with the writers.
Correct.
And he was like, go write your scene with so-and-so, and they helped them. Like, just having their input. And I think from a filmmaker's perspective, how smart is that?
That's so smart.
Because you're going to sound more like a teenager than like a 40-year-old trying to sound like a teenager.
And I mean, I've done improv. You've done improv.
Yeah.
Improv is not easy, everyone. I think improv at times can be easier than scripted, but only if it's comedy. I feel like improv comedy is fairly easier than improv drama.
Oh, gosh.
I don't know if you agree with me. As a performer, that's my opinion. So I can't even imagine being that young, filming a movie with John Hughes at the time, who was huge. I mean, he's still is an icon of that time. And being told, okay, you're going to do some dramatic improv.
Yeah. And being able to do it. And I think it speaks to the type of culture that he created. You know, again, there's some problematic things in this film. I know a few years ago, Molly Ringwald came out to speak about some problematic scenes that... we're not saying that, like, John Hughes is, like, an angel and a saint, we should put him on a pedestal. But it speaks to the culture of the way a lot of these films were made. Yeah. Which really was, like, we would like the creative input of these young people and of our talent. And we're only going to hire talent who are willing to do those things and have that creativity in them, not just ones who are like, oh, I want to be a star, give me my paycheck.
Right.
But the other way around. And I think that's why these movies are so engaging. And so even now, you watch the storylines and you're like, oh, I feel that. Or, like, I mean, I wouldn't now, but like my kids could watch it.
But you can remember. And I think that's why these movies stand the test of time, is because that sense of nostalgia, right?
Totally.
Even though we weren't teenagers during the 80s, okay? When we watched these movies, we were close to teenage years, probably. Yeah. Either a little bit past or a little bit before, like me. But I think that's the nostalgia lies. That's why we love to go rewatch Dawson's Creek or Can't Hardly Wait, which, by the way, is becoming a Broadway musical. Oh my God, we're so excited.
What?
We'll talk about that another day.
Who's coming with us?
Oh my God.
Let us
Carlos
know.
Will.
Carlos, you're coming with us.
He already invited himself.
Amanda, you're coming.
Oh yeah, her
Jen.
too.
Okay, anyway. Another
you
episode.
should rent a bus and it'd be so much
Seriously.
fun. I'm just kidding. We don't have any money. So
we don't.
Anyway, anything else on the documentary?
No, I did think just watch it. Again, like Danny said at the top of the episode, this wasn't necessarily our own deep delve into the Brat Pack, although Danny did bring some research.
Yeah.
This was more like not a review, but like an overview of the documentary. And there's obviously more to say beyond that. So, I would say maybe that's a good jumping off point for people. And then if you're like really interested in it, watch some of the movies, read some of the books some of these actors have written, and some of the authors that are in the documentary. Maybe look up their books and, kind of immerse yourself in like what it all meant. And also like, what's the lesson of this? The lesson is don't lump a bunch of people together.
Right.
Or if you are lumped into a group that you don't want to be in, don't stay there.
Don't let it define you.
Don't let it define you, because you can certainly rise above. And anyway, awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for listening to this episode of Generation in Between, Xennial, and we had Xennial-adjacent topics today. If you like what you listened to, please leave us a review. Also, we have on all of our social media a spot where you can suggest episodes. If you want to email us, it's that very long email, generationinbetweenpodcast@gmail.com, or just send us a message on socials. That's where we get most of them.
Yes.
If you know us, send us a text. And we would love to hear from you on this and other topics. And we will, and if you enjoyed this, we are going to record an after show for our Patreon only members. We've got all sorts of after shows on there and some other stuff. So make sure you join and check us out there.
Yay.
And we will see you next time on Generation in Between.
Wait, we have to end it with...
Oh, you have one. Yeah. Okay. Something witty about the show. Go.
Well, no, dang it. It's not something witty.
Oh, shoot. Something
I was just... We have to end it with the song.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Don't you forget about me. All right, that's all. All right. No. I started at the wrong point. Whatever. There we go. That's
I'm just going to follow her. I'm going up. She's going down.
Okay,
I'm like, we're going down. We're going down.
I started at the wrong verse.
It's okay.
All right, never mind.
They get it.
Done. Okay, bye. We love you guys.
All right, see you next time.